My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Princess Bride wasn't just a fairy tale. It was a battlefield of clashing egos, dangerous stunts, studio doubt, and creative genius barely holding together. While audiences saw a whimsical fantasy, behind the curtain was chaos, broken bones, near-fatal injuries, rewrites, and battles with studio executives. Today we're pulling back the curtain to reveal 20 weird facts about The Princess Bride that prove this film was as dangerous as it was magical. And stick around, because our bonus fact might be the wildest secret of all. Let's dive in. Cary Elwes's broken ankle changed everything. Cary Elwes, playing Wesley, suffered a brutal accident just weeks into shooting. While riding Andre the Giant's all-terrain vehicle on set, Elwes got too close to the gears. The machine ran over his foot, shattering his ankle. The timing couldn't have been worse. Elwes had sword fights, horseback riding, and a daring cliff climb ahead. To keep filming, director Rob Reiner and cinematographer Adrian Biddle cleverly shot around the injury, framing Elwes from the waist up or having him lean dramatically to disguise his limp. What audiences didn't know is that Wesley's dashing stance was partly due to Elwes literally propping himself against walls in pain. The irony? The very film that made him a swashbuckling romantic hero nearly crippled him. Mandy Patinkin took his duel deadly serious. The famous duel between Inigo Montoya and Wesley wasn't just the greatest sword fight of the 80s. It was months of grueling rehearsal. Patinkin and Elwes trained under legendary stunt coordinator Bob Anderson, who had coached lightsaber battles in Star Wars. The actors insisted on performing the fight themselves, no stunt doubles. They spent 6 months practicing 4 hours a day until they could execute the choreography blindfolded. On set, they shocked everyone by nailing the full duel in one unbroken take. The only stunt they didn't do? The acrobatic flips. Anderson brought in gymnasts for that. Patinkin later admitted, "I never wanted to let my father down. This was my gift to him." The fight wasn't just a duel. It was a son's tribute, woven into celluloid, Andre the Giant's hidden agony. Audiences remember Andre the Giant as a gentle mountain of a man. But what they didn't see was the daily pain he endured. Andre suffered from acromegaly, a condition that enlarged his bones and caused severe back pain. By 1987, his body was failing. He couldn't lift Robin Wright safely during the famous catching Buttercup scene, so the crew used wires and hidden stunt rigs to give the illusion of strength. In reality, Andre could barely walk without help. Yet his presence on set was so warm that cast members called him the glue holding them together. His booming laugh, his protective nature, and his gallons of wine turned grueling shoot days into family gatherings. Behind the fairy tale, a giant was quietly fighting a losing battle. Wallace Shawn's terrifying insecurity. Wallace Shawn, who played the cunning Vizzini, nearly had a breakdown on set. He was convinced Rob Reiner had only cast him as a backup. Shawn believed Danny DeVito had been the first choice, and that he, Shawn, was a poor substitute. Terrified of being fired mid-shoot, Shawn obsessed over every line, every pause. During the Battle of Wits scene with Cary Elwes, his nerves peaked. He later admitted he thought each take might be his last. Ironically, his paranoia and manic energy translated perfectly into Vizzini's character. His frantic delivery of "inconceivable" wasn't just acting. It was genuine fear channeled into performance. What fans remember as comedy was, in truth, a man on the verge of collapse. Robin Wright nearly froze on set. For Robin Wright, filming The Princess Bride was a trial by fire, or rather by ice. The fire swamp sequence was shot in bitter cold conditions on a British soundstage with inadequate heating. Wright, wearing a thin gown, endured freezing temperatures and smoke machines blasting chemicals in her face. During the quicksand scene, she was dropped into a pit of cold, wet sand-like mixture that stuck to her skin for hours. Wright later confessed she fought back tears during filming, determined not to ruin her big break. At just 21 years old, she powered through discomfort that would have sidelined more seasoned stars. On screen, Buttercup looked serene and graceful. Off-screen, Wright was shivering, coughing, and praying for the scene to end. Christopher Guest's brutal sword strike. Christopher Guest, the normally soft-spoken actor who played Count Rugen, accidentally caused one of the most painful injuries on set. During the climactic torture chamber scene, Guest's sword, supposed to stop inches from Cary Elwes's head, slammed into Elwes's temple. The blow knocked him unconscious. Elwes woke up in a hospital, stitched and bruised. He later joked that his performance during Wesley's torture was made far more realistic, thanks to Guest's unintentional strike. The incident revealed how dangerous even choreographed fights could be when fatigue set in. guessed, devastated, repeatedly apologized. But the footage was so convincing that Reiner kept it in. What audiences saw as the cruelty of the six-fingered man was, in fact, a moment where acting and reality blurred painfully close. The rats of unusual size were real men in suits. The fire swamp's ROUS, rodents of unusual size, weren't animatronics or puppets. They were real people sweating inside massive rat costumes. These performers faced hell inside the suits. Barely any ventilation, sweltering lights, and zero visibility. One actor, Danny Blackner, even had to fight off a police officer during a break, still dressed as a rat, after being mistaken for an intruder. Carrie. Elwes recalled how dangerous the ROUS fights were. Between his broken ankle and the unpredictability of the actors in rat suits, each take felt like chaos. Despite the absurdity, the realism they achieved has outlasted CGI. The rats weren't just unusual in size, they were unusual in risk. Billy Crystal nearly destroyed scenes with laughter. When Billy Crystal showed up as Miracle Max, the set transformed into pure chaos. Crystal improvised so wildly that Rob Reiner, director of the entire film, had to be escorted off set because he laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. Mandy Patinkin wasn't any better. He cracked so many times that he bruised a rib from holding in laughter. Most of Crystal's best lines were never in the script. His ad-libbed, "Have fun, storm in the castle," became one of the film's most beloved quotes. The cost? Dozens of ruined takes, hours of wasted film, and a crew barely able to function through tears of laughter. What audiences saw as comic gold was forged from barely controlled anarchy. Studio executives didn't believe in the film. Before release, The Princess Bride was considered a disaster waiting to happen. Executives at 20th Century Fox worried the film was too strange to market. A romance, a comedy, a fantasy, and an adventure all at once. They demanded edits, cuts, and compromises. Rob Reiner fought back fiercely, insisting the film keep its quirky blend. Even then, the studio's marketing campaign was half-hearted. Posters confused audiences, trailers failed to capture the humor, and some executives predicted it would flop. They weren't entirely wrong. The film underperformed at the box office. What they didn't predict was how VHS and cable television would resurrect it, turning it into a cultural phenomenon. The disaster they feared became a timeless legend. Mandy Patinkin's emotional breakdown on set. Mandy Patinkin wasn't just acting when he delivered Inigo Montoya's iconic line to Count Rugen. He was channeling real grief. Patinkin's father had died of cancer years earlier, and the role became a way of processing his pain. During the final duel, when Inigo repeats, "You killed my father? Prepare to die?" Patinkin later revealed he imagined he was speaking directly to cancer itself. The emotion was so raw that cast and crew reportedly fell silent after takes. What looked like a simple revenge scene was, for Patinkin, a cathartic exorcism of rage and sorrow. Fans often described chills during that moment. The truth? They were watching a man relive one of the deepest wounds of his life. The fire swamp was actually dangerous. The fire swamp wasn't just a clever set, it was hazardous for everyone working on it. To simulate bursts of fire, the crew used real gas jets timed with precision. But the timing often misfired. Cary Elwes and Robin Wright had to hit exact marks or risk being singed. On one occasion, Wright's gown caught fire at the hem before crew. Members rushed in with extinguishers. Meanwhile, the smoke machines released thick, choking fog that left actors coughing between takes. Reiner later admitted he underestimated how suffocating the conditions would be. For the cast, every step in that swamp felt like walking a tightrope between make-believe danger and very real injury. Audiences saw whimsy, but the cast saw fire, suffocation, and chaos. Rob Reiner cried from stress. Directors rarely reveal just how fragile they feel on set, but Rob Reiner has admitted The Princess Bride nearly broke him. Between managing studio pressure, unpredictable weather, and Andre the Giant's health issues, the stress piled up fast. On the day of the sword fight shoot, with hundreds of extras waiting and lights burning expensive minutes, everything fell behind schedule. Reiner slipped away to a corner of the set and broke down in tears. Cast members later said his vulnerability made them respect him even more. He wasn't just their director, he was a man under crushing weight trying to deliver something magical. Not X, but Y. Not the image of a calm commander, but a man quietly holding the dream together with sheer willpower. Robin Wright's secret casting battle. Robin Wright almost didn't get to be Buttercup. At the time, she was a relatively unknown actress from Santa Barbara. Studios wanted a bankable star. Names like Courtney Cox, Uma Thurman, and even Meg Ryan were tossed around. Reiner fought hard for Wright, convinced her natural elegance embodied the fairy tale heroine. But behind closed doors, executives doubted she could carry the role. Wright herself admitted she felt the pressure. "It was my first film, and I thought I was going to blow it every day." The irony is that her calm, regal presence on screen was born from sheer nerves. Not a confident princess, but a terrified newcomer masking fear with grace. Today, her buttercup feels inevitable. But at the time, she was one studio vote away from vanishing. Andre the Giant drank 119 beers in one night. Andre's legendary drinking wasn't a myth. It was a nightly event. Cast and crew recall stories of him consuming dozens of beers in a single sitting. Cary Elwes wrote that one evening Andre polished off 119 bottles, a feat that staggered everyone. Alcohol dulled the constant pain from his acromegaly, making him more comfortable on set. But it also led to unpredictable situations. Once, Andre passed out in the hotel lobby, too heavy for anyone to move, so staff covered him with a velvet rope until morning. Yet Andre was never belligerent. His drinking was his way of coping. What audiences didn't see, while Fezzik was a lovable, gentle giant, the man behind him was numbing himself just to endure each day. The Cliffs of Insanity weren't in Ireland. One of the film's most breathtaking moments is the climb up the Cliffs of Insanity. Audiences assumed it was filmed in Ireland or some mystical fantasy land. The truth? The exterior shots were done at the Cliffs of Moher in County Clare, Ireland, but the actual climbing sequences were filmed on a set in England. To sell the illusion, giant backdrops and forced perspective tricks were used. For Cary Elwes, still suffering from his broken ankle, the harness work was excruciating. Andre the Giant couldn't physically perform the climbing, so clever editing and doubles sold the gag. The cliffs looked seamless on screen, but they were stitched together from geography, paint, and pain. Not a single cliff, but a Frankenstein's monster of illusion. Cary Elwes was actually knocked out during the torture scene. When Wesley is strapped into the machine for Count Rugen's torture, Cary Elwes insisted the ropes be tied tightly for realism. Christopher Guest, nervous about hurting him after already striking him earlier, tried to pull his punches. But one rehearsal went wrong. Elwes accidentally slammed his own head against the torture table and blacked out. The crew thought he was acting until he didn't move. When he came to, he was dazed, but insisted on continuing. That eerie stillness you see when Wesley dies in the machine? Much of it came from a real moment of unconsciousness. What audiences saw as fantasy agony was, in reality, a glimpse of genuine injury, one that nearly cost Elwes more than just a scene. The film's budget was constantly on the brink. The Princess Bride may look like a lavish fantasy, but it was made on a relatively modest budget of around $16 million. Every day of filming pushed that line. Horses were expensive. The custom-built sets like the Fire Swamp and the Pit of Despair drained resources. Costumes were handmade and sword trainers cost thousands weekly. Rayner often joked they were one overrun away from cancellation. The crew resorted to tricks, using matte paintings instead of full locations, hiring unknowns, and shooting in fewer takes. The irony is that the low budget forced creativity that gave the film its quirky, handcrafted feel. Not the polished sheen of blockbuster fantasy, but the rough-hewn charm of a passion project stitched together with ingenuity and hope. William Goldman cried during a screening. Screenwriter William Goldman, who had spent over a decade fighting to get his book made into a film, was famously moved to tears on set. During the Fire Swamp quicksand sequence, Robin Wright gets pulled into the pit, and Goldman, watching from the monitors, screamed, "Oh my God, she's gone!" before bursting into tears. He had forgotten for a moment that it was staged. Goldman later admitted that seeing his words come alive after years of rejections overwhelmed him. His emotional outburst shut down filming for a short time as cast and crew reassured him. What audiences didn't know, behind the witty narration and comic tone was a writer who had nearly given up, only to see his dream realized with raw, tearful joy. The film almost didn't find a distributor. Even after it wrapped, The Princess Bride struggled to reach theaters. Studios balked at how to market it. Was it a children's fairy tale? A satire for adults? A romance? Executives didn't know, so distribution stalled. At one point, the film was nearly shelved indefinitely. It was Norman Lear, the TV mogul who produced it, who stepped in with his clout to secure release through 20th Century Fox. Still, marketing campaigns were weak, and the movie opened to modest box office numbers. Without home video, it might have vanished into obscurity. Instead, VHS tapes and cable TV gave it a second life. Not an instant hit, but a slow-burning legend. kept alive by fans who discovered it at home, not in theaters. Cary Elwes and Robin Wright's chemistry was real. The spark between Wesley and Buttercup didn't need much acting. Cary Elwes admitted in interviews that he was utterly smitten with Robin Wright during filming. Wright, though focused on her big break, shared a natural affection with Elwes that translated to screen. Their stolen glances and tender exchanges weren't just scripted. They were tinged with genuine attraction. Reiner noticed the unforced intimacy and leaned into it, keeping cameras rolling during unscripted moments. The irony is that their off-screen chemistry never turned into romance. They were both swept into different lives after filming. But what audiences felt as timeless love was born from a fleeting but real connection, captured forever on film. Not just acting, but hearts quietly colliding. A secret cameo nobody noticed. Here's the kicker. The film hides a cameo almost nobody spots. The grandson's bedroom, where Peter Falk narrates the story, features a baseball team poster, the New York Jets, Rob Reiner's favorite team. But that wasn't the original plan. Goldman wanted a Yankees poster to reflect childhood nostalgia. Reiner overruled him, sneaking in the Jets nod as a personal signature. Even funnier, most audiences never noticed, but die-hard fans caught it years later. It's a tiny Easter egg, invisible to many, yet it represents the tug-of-war between writer and director, layered into the film's very first frames. The biggest secret wasn't in the fire swamp or cliffs of insanity. It was hiding in a suburban bedroom wall, unnoticed for decades. The Princess Bride wasn't just a fairy tale about true love and high adventure. It was a production defined by injuries, risks, battles, and unexpected tenderness. What looked effortless on screen was forged from pain, fear, and resilience. The legacy? A film that taught us fairy tales aren't just fantasies, they're survival stories. If you loved these secrets, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with a fellow fan. And remember, as you wish.